Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, post-match, Felix Auger-Aliassime versus Taylor Fritz, ATP Finals 2022, round-robin stage. This was to make the semifinals. Loser goes home, winner advances. I will also give some comments on Nadal Ruud this morning. Not going to do a detailed breakdown of that dead rubber, but I will share some thoughts at the end of this video. FAA Fritz was another incredibly serve-dominated battle. I feel like it was, from an entertainment standpoint, a little bit too serve-centric, and I love the variety. I want quick surfaces, slow surfaces. I'm all for that. It's just, at times, it seemed like there was a lack of suspense. In the first set, there were 0 break points. In the second set, Felix had the only 3 break points. Fritz saved them all. First 2 sets went to a tie-break. They split those sets. In the third set, Taylor was able to pull away and actually broke Felix's serve twice to win the third set 6-2, sort of out of nowhere, as I was quite frankly expecting another set similar to the first 2 we had seen. So, Fritz, win percentage on first serve, 88%. Win percentage on second serve, 71%. Felix was basically never in it, any service games. He had that one in the second set, and that was it. But let's get into what changed in the third set. Like, how did we get to this 6-2 out of nowhere for Fritz? FA's first serve stopped working. That was the issue here. If you look at first serve points won, first set, 79%. Second set, 90%. Third set, 47%. A crazy dip there in that third set. Unreturned serves percentage for serves, 48, 42, 33. Felix getting only 33% unreturned in these conditions. Really, really low. And what ended up happening was the forehand of Auger-Aliassime, mostly the forehand, maybe a little bit, sprinkle bit of blame on the backhand, but mostly the forehand. It was not solid enough to make up for the lack of free points. It's not as if Fritz was doing a really good job of getting the ball to the Felix backhand on the return. I thought that Felix got the forehands he needed, the forehands he was looking for, and just flat out missed them. You look at that 2-3 game, a lot of forehand errors, unforced errors, including the break point that Fritz ultimately ended up converting on. It was a second serve, but Felix had the forehand he wanted, just pulled it wide. So the forehand was not consistent enough to make up for the lack of free points that Felix was getting in this third and final set. Why was he not getting the free points is kind of a tough question to answer. The average speed did not dip. It was the exact same. The only thing I'll say is I thought he missed his spot too many times on the tee serve. I was surprised with how much he went tee, particularly on the deuce side. He really suffered on the deuce side in first serve points in the third set. I was surprised with how much he went tee, because in the second set, he had lots of success with the wide serve. He kind of got away from it for the most part, and he just missed his spot to the tee too much. And Fritz's better return is the backhand return, and you're not challenging his movement because you're bringing him to the center of the court. So if you serve tee on the deuce side or the ad side, you better get free points. You better get sitters. You better get aces. It felt like Felix missed his spot on too many tee serves, and credit to Fritz for really making him pay. But ultimately, maybe I'm missing something as for what the reason was. The free points just dried up in the third set, and the first serve stopped working for Felix. Before I get into the first set and the second set, where I do think there are some takeaways, a shout out to BetUS. Coverage of the ATP Finals preview is brought to you by BetUS for this year's year-end championships. Play with America's favorite sportsbook and get $125 extra on your first deposit by using the link in the description. The promo code Gill Gross gets you $125 off your first deposit. In the first set, as I said, no break points. Goes to a tiebreak. Felix's backhand faltered. Harken back to, I think it was the first day of the tournament, and Felix had a really awful backhand day against Casper Ruud, and it really, for the most part, cost him that match. In the first set, that was once again a big issue, where he made 3 unforced errors, mishits, on that backhand side, which is more often than not going to cost you a tiebreak like that. I do think Fritz's aggression into big targets was pretty effective. Fritz tends to do that. He hits it very hard. And he tends to get good depth on the ball, but he doesn't always try to thread the needle, play close to the sideline, open up angles of the court. Fritz is very happy to use his power into big targets. And I thought there were times, especially in this tiebreak, you saw some of the errors. It just looked like Felix's pace absorption was not really on point, that the pace was getting to him, the depth was getting to him. And some of those errors were coming off of Fritz's power into the big targets. I should say unforced errors for the match were 36-22 in favor of Fritz. So Taylor kept it a lot cleaner. He deserves a lot of credit for that. And that's why going into the third set, I didn't know that Felix's first serve was going to stop working. That to me was a surprise. But I would say I was liking the way Taylor was playing a little bit better because it just felt somewhat more trustworthy off the ground. I thought the mistakes were just less common, and that was ultimately going to be the difference, unless there was, unless something changed with the serves, and obviously something did. In the second set, one good chance for Felix to break, and now there were 3 break points, but the only one where he really had a chance was on a second serve at 15-40. He mishit a second serve return on a backhand, which was a really tough mistake for Felix to make. And overall, you look at Fritz winning 71% of his second serve points. That even in these conditions, that's a crazy number that Felix would want to look at and think about why that happened. I'm not exactly sure, to be completely honest. However, Felix took care of his serve for the remainder of the second set. So despite missing that chance to break, it goes to a tiebreak again. And then Fritz goes up a mini break in that tiebreak. He hits a bad double fault. His toss got away from him a little bit too far out to the right, and he hits a double fault. There goes the mini break. And then at 5-all, if I'm going to give the Felix backhand some flack, I got to be fair. You got to be fair. In that 5-all point, it was the FAA forehand that finished the point, a forehand inside in that forced an error. But the backhand went toe-to-toe in trading with Taylor enough to give himself the opportunity to eventually run around and hit that forehand inside in. So 5-all, the backhand held up, and Felix got the forehand, which is kind of like should be the slogan of Felix's offseason. I think there are improvements to make on the second serve, but I think, in terms of the backhand, it doesn't need to be awesome. It doesn't need to be great. Just make it solid enough. Make it good enough to get to the forehand. It just needs to hold up. That's all. It did in this 5-all point. Felix went up 6-5 with that mini break and closed it out with a nice serve +1 forehand inside out winner. So that's how the second set went down. I already talked about the third set, and that'll wrap it up. Taylor Fritz makes the semis, first American since Sock in 2017. A stat that I only say because I think it's amusing. It was kind of like a fever dream when Jack Sock had that incredible fall in 2017. But congratulations to Fritz, who has really, got in because of the Carlos injury. But in these conditions, he's proven himself, and I do think he's had a great 2022, and I'm glad to see him rewarded with this kind of accomplishment to make the semis of this ATP Finals. Nadal Ruud, 7-5, 7-5 victory for Rafa Nadal. Obviously, Nadal found his rhythm off the ground in this match, but what I thought would happen happened. Ruud gives Rafa much more time, way more time. Now, I don't think it was the Casper Ruud backhand, which all in all has really impressed me this week, as it did at the US Open when he made that run to the final. It wasn't so much the Ruud backhand. It was more the general approach that he took from the baseline. And Nadal looked so much more comfortable versus how he did against Fritz and Felix because he just had more time. Ruud was not as aggressive. He was not taking the ball as early, and he was not hitting as hard. And those three things just allowed Nadal to settle in. And then Rafa had a great forehand day. Nadal's forehand was on point. He also had a big day on first serve. Another representation of these conditions. Nadal set a record today. Most aces that he's ever had on a hard court. Shout out to Ali for that stat. I'm not going to read too much into Casper's performance. It was a dead rubber. You know, we know that there are maybe some mental challenges when Ruud goes up against Nadal, but it was a dead rubber, and I'm not going to read into it. Let's see how he looks in the semifinal. For Nadal, big picture, it's an ideal way to go out, and at least he gets one quality win to go into the offseason, or to go into at least exhibition season in this case. And, you know, I think he'll feel good about it. And in the big picture, I just don't think any of this mattered so much. You know, Nadal, I believe Nadal when he says it was going to be beneficial for me to just, you know, play some matches this month so that I just start to get, you know, familiarize myself with the feeling of match play before I go into this offseason. I believe that will be beneficial. Now, if he just got smoked by Ruud and he looked awful again, all right, that's an empty trip. You know, that's an empty trip to Turin where it didn't really help him. But even just one win, I think, can make a little bit of a difference. And then in the big picture, in terms of the alarm bells going off, the emergency sirens being rung after Nadal loses 4 matches in a row, it just lacks perspective. Nadal was arguably had the best season out of anyone in the year 2022. So to go into 2023, especially when Rafa's healthy, he had the best, potentially the best year of everyone, out of anyone. You can argue about Djokovic and Alcaraz. I'm not interested in talking about that right now. Arguably, the best year out of anyone. And he doesn't have health concerns. You go into 2023 feeling good if you're Rafa Nadal. I don't want to hear it. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.